Good morning, everybody. I'm Marissa. I'm super excited that you have come to join to talk about your relationship with data. The tagline is understanding your role and responsibility as a builder. I've met some of you all, I haven't met all of you, and as I understand it, you are all working at startups that are either delivering products for end users or working on B2B services. Maybe building infrastructure, building tooling. Here's what I mean by builders: anybody who's contributing to these teams in terms of designing what you're building, scoping it out, framing the problems, testing it, building it, all these things. So in my mind, you're all builders. I feel like I'm kind of making this work out, but that's what we're going with here. And the thing that I want to talk with is opening up a conversation around what's our relationship with data. Now, I have a feeling with this crowd, I don't need to do my usual spiel about how data is so hot right now. It's so exciting. There's so much power, so much promise. It's going to be, all of it. What I will say that I feel is really relevant to this conversation is that in the scope of all of the excitement that we're seeing, I also feel like there's this never-ending kind of deluge of headlines about where things are going wrong. And this is where it speaks to the work that I really care about in the space. Right now, the thing that I'm devoting all my attention is thinking about, I want to live in a world where everybody has the knowledge and agency to thrive in our increasingly digital world. And the biggest weakness I see right now is that I don't feel like our relationship with data as individuals or as people who work with data necessarily matches our hopes and dreams for what we're going to be doing with it. So I feel like it's been sort of this neglected undercurrent of, what does data mean to people? How do people think about their own data? How do we talk with them more effectively about what their data means and what it means to be sharing data for all these exciting use cases? I'm not really sure what this picture denotes. It's kind of like this souped up smart city that might be, who knows what, all these lines of, the connections and things. So I would say, based on recent framing, I feel like we're in a data crisis. We need a different approach. I feel like I said, we're seeing so many headlines. I feel daily about the ways in which the tooling that we're building, the services we're building can actually be abused, they can be misused, people are surprised. I've had a handful of friends text me over the past couple days about, oh my gosh, what does it mean that TikTok actually has full view into any web browsing that I do? What does this mean that they can see my credit card information? They can see all the ads, they can see kind of just like God used what you're seeing in TikTok. Why? Who built it this way? And what are they doing? And how do you know? And what can you do instead? So that's where the connection is for the talk today. Us as builders, I'm gonna guess none of us contributed to building TikTok, but we're in a similar position where we're building really important tools. And sometimes I think we get caught up in, let's do it fast, let's do it at scale. I spent some time at a company where it was move fast and break things. And break things, they didn't. They moved fast and they did break things. So I'll say I'm really craving a new approach. And this talk is about bringing us through a couple of activities and discussion points where we're going to chat about what that new approach might be. I'm setting this up not to come in and kind of lecture about here's how we should do it. I'm not next going to say, and here is the new approach. Unfortunately, I haven't cracked that case yet. And I think it'll take all of us. So knowing that you all are builders, I'll guess that a good number of you are trained in a traditional engineering field. And so this idea of problem solving is caught on our list, right? We love solving problems. Give us kind of something to do. It's okay, how do we do something that is scalable, efficient, effective? I want to solve it. Beyond just solving a problem, I think, and I feel like sometimes our traditional training gets us very excited about we want to be able to solve the problem. But there are other areas where our skills can apply where we could be spending more time on our problem framing. So what is it that we care about? What are our objectives? What is worth doing? How do we prioritize? And that's kind of an area we can think about. Also, problem finding. I've noticed that, that's what I say, I feel like sometimes the companies I've worked at have been pretty lazy about finding interesting problems. We go after kind of the same things. We're all working in small places, and we could open our eyes and I think look at solving different things, and that would be exciting too, and maybe put us on a different trajectory. These areas, and kind of roughly like my thinking around them, was really influenced by this interesting book called Engineering Justice: Transforming Engineering Education and Practice. And it's I feel like it's quite like inside baseball and very academic in a sense, but also really interesting to read as an engineer, like the ways in which our traditional education does kind of limit our thinking, and how we could maybe step outside that and into things a little bit different. So as promised in the description of this talk, the things that we're going to be doing today, the themes here will be that we're going to be talking about you personally and your role and work that you do, and also thinking through your responsibility, how you think about your personal responsibility as you go about your work. The focus points, so in the abstract we talked about, there's room for micro level changes up to macro, and we're going to focus on 3 pieces of this. Micro, starting with you yourself, like you as a person. Then we're going to go to the meso level, you as how you show up as a worker, and a little bigger, you as a member of your professional community, in terms of whatever role it is that you identify with there. So, we're going to get to something active in a moment. Let's talk about you, your core values, and your work. So, question theme, we're going to write this down. You have your piece of paper, we're going to write it down, and as you do when you're taking your notes, I want you to think through, are the notes that you're taking something that you would be willing to share with me? And if you are willing to share them with me, would you be willing to have your name on them? And I'm interested in how do people think about their values, how does that show up in decision making? So it is totally up to you to share your values. You can keep them to yourself, and that's great too. I'll just leave that there. So what we're going to do, we're going to spend a couple of minutes where I want you to look at this list and choose 3 to 5 values on it that you feel resonate with. What is important to you? What are the anchors in your decision making? What are the things that you strive for? It can be aspirational. It doesn't need to be things that you're doing every day. So if you've done a values exploration before, you can revisit it if you like. Yeah, take a look at these words and note down 3 to 5 that stand out to you. What's important? Now, I won't ask you to share these with the group. Just keep these in mind for yourself. I should have also noted, this is about like 40 common values. Many of these lists will be up to like 200 different words. If you haven't sat with a journal and done a values exploration, I feel like it's time well spent to kind of refresh every couple of years. So now I want to talk about me. And for myself, so I defended 10 years ago, defended my dissertation 10 years ago. My PhD is in computer science. I'm trained in human-centered security and privacy, and wrote a dissertation on more or less like the usability of Facebook privacy settings. So I was curious for, based on how people want to be using Facebook, are they able to then take the settings that were available at the time in Norman and twiddle them just right so that they're sharing their photos with exactly the right audience? And it ended up being a really interesting project and kind of set me on a certain trajectory where to do this research, it was an exciting time. The Facebook API was available, so my dissertation work used the same API that Cambridge Analytica used. We used it to very different results, of course. And also knowing that, so from my background it was, I was interested in kind of this felt like a new era where people were basically being asked to be like the system administrator of their own lives. So I knew that security tasks and objectives weren't things that came naturally or easy to people, and that the developers who were using the Facebook API were maybe not aware of the security and privacy implications of the sorts of access tokens that were being asked for. I knew that a lot of academic researchers were using the Facebook API, and I got interested in how were academic institutional review boards that are put into place to protect human subjects when you're doing research. How are they making determinations about the safety of software protocols and the adequacy of how researchers are protecting their data? I got really interested in research ethics. I got really interested in how do you review it, what is enough, how do you know that it's effective? And also, while doing that work, I was looking at Facebook privacy settings. So I went off and I worked at Facebook. I joined Facebook's public policy team in 2015 as their first technical privacy manager. And it was a really interesting time. I didn't have these values written down. I didn't have them in my head. And I feel like I kind of developed these over time as I was realizing that my work experiences were leaving me very frustrated and kind of dissatisfied. And these are the things I've kind of settled on over the past 10 years. It's very important to me to be deliberate. I want to be very thoughtful in what I do. I want to be curious and try to understand who are the people who are helping, where do the problems come from, how do we shape them up. Being humble, it's important to me to approach these questions knowing that I don't know everything and there's a lot to be learned and a lot we can do different. And being honest about limitations of my skills. And to be empathic, to really connect with the folks I'm working with and the people we're working for. So you can probably guess, or maybe even start to see the way that these values show up in the work that I do and how I talk about it. So when I went out to work at Facebook, I was super excited to be part of a crew. So I felt like on the left hand was what was going to happen. I thought I'd be in the kitchen and really be contributing to, building something great and get to, decide what the flourishes were going to be, decide on the ingredients, be a taste tester, deliver things and feel proud and excited. And I feel like what actually ended up happening was I ended up washing the dishes. And it wasn't I've worked in a lot of restaurants throughout when I was in high school and college, and smell kind of the dishwasher smell. But it didn't feel good. I didn't feel like I was really in a position to contribute to the decision making. So I was there under the guise of being part of this cross-functional privacy review team that came to be at Facebook because of the consent decree with the FTC, because they had made kind of interesting decisions about how they design products and how they design privacy settings. And this growing sort of kind of discontent, I felt like the thing that was missing was that, only in hindsight do I see it's any conversation about how decision making was happening was only happening under the guise of the values were do it fast, do it big, and kind of break things with permission to move fast and break things. And so for me, it's really important to look for opportunities to kind of give space to a conversation where you're designing your work and thinking about your decision making that introduces an opportunity to think about different values. So it's interesting, or I feel it's interesting now to look back, we're like, those values of scale and efficiency and impact were so both implicit in everything that we did and also explicit in all like the signs you would see around. I was like, okay, so how do we build in opportunities to push back on that? So now I'm interested for you all where, okay, I know that Superset has, I think, a lot of different companies within the Hive that are interested in working with data in a different way, interested in working with privacy in a different way. And kind of, you're at different parts of this journey in terms of like, how big is the privacy crisis and what do we need to do? So now we're going to do a group activity where we're going to think about you as a worker. So think about the values that you bring into your work and how it affects your decision making, how it affects the conversations that you have, how it affects the time that you put into framing the problems, seeking problems, and thinking about different solutions. And we're going to do this as a two-step part. So I want you to spend first a few minutes thinking individually, recalling a past incident where either decisions were being made about data collection, data use, product, service, or design. And I'm wondering, with your individual values and those fresh in your mind, were you satisfied with the process of how this work went about, and or were you satisfied with the outcome? And this could be something that you recently worked on, something that's been in the past that you might have done. So how are your values showing up in your work, or how would you like them to?
Take the values what we wrote before contemplating this.
Yeah.
Right, sure, privacy policy might
This was
encourage
a great
more
conversation.
sharing.
We're missed to cut it
But I think what we're saying is more of
We're
it.
gonna cut it off.
You just don't want to check it.
Is anybody, maybe I'll give you a moment to finish your list. Is anybody dying to finish the sentence? Alrighty. Is anybody, I'm so curious right now. Is anybody willing to share, or do you want to move on? What came up? Anything come up that was a highlight? Anything came up that you had a question about?
Mostly journals.
I can share.
You share.
I was voluntold to share. I'm at Escalera. We're an employee empowerment platform. We provide this training for inclusion in the workplace. And the biggest edge that we have is that these training programs are of them, the employee, and not just the usual HR compliance training where people check. And HR checks in the box and we're set. Right? And so one big promise that we make to our clients is that we are not going to share their data with their employers in a way that it can be identified. Okay? But as we're providing more and more useful insights to companies, right, they are asking for more and more granular results. So they want to know which team are we having a hotspot, right? Which age group is having an issue, and so on. And so we've had to make some very hard decisions. For a small company, we do want to answer these questions, but at the same time, the only reason why we get good data is because we build that trust with the employees that are going through these programs, right? And so I've created these minimum sample size, no cuts unless sample size of a certain number. We decide to only provide cuts for certain buckets, each bucket, not per day, not per year, and so on. The biggest issue that we're having right now, and I welcome any kind of suggestion from this, is that there is this area of collaboration that's opening up for some clients where they're asking us, when we're all recognizing the fact that there's a lot more insights we can provide if we integrate data. The Escalera data that we're collecting on our own with their HR people analytics data. And so again, that would involve some data sharing at the individual level, possibly, right, that would break this promise. So we're trying to navigate that, because obviously if we get integrated in their HR reporting, right, it makes us an integral part of their people analytics and HR processes. but at the same time, we cannot, like, we've decided that this is sacrosanct, this promise that we want as a data employer is something that needs to come first.
Love it because it's like one thing that I'm not sure that I've emphasized much in the talk is that to me the reason why it's important to have conversations about values and have conversations about like what promises and commitments have you made in regard to data is that if there are no objective rules about what's right and wrong to do with data, and like the right data shared at the right point of time and combined with the other right data, it's greatness can happen, right? Data meeting data is where interesting things happen, and that's I think what we're all excited about. But at the same time, if you don't have that, like an environment in which you kind of have some grounding by which to make the decisions, I think it's really easy to like kind of end up down a slippery slope where when how do you know when you've got too far? How do you know when are you still serving and not? Super good example. Okay, let's go on in the for time's sake. I was glad to hear that you all seem to have a lot of the conversation, so I'm glad to know the talk didn't fall flat. If you want to share with me afterward the ways in which the problem might have fallen flat for you, I'd love to hear it. Moving on. Okay, so one of the things, again, bringing up this diagram where I think I've been there before, maybe you have too, spending too much time on problem solving when sometimes it can really benefit you to take a step back and think more about how are you framing up the problem, what are the objectives, what is the satisfactory solution, and how are we all coming together to contribute. In this talk, one of the reasons why I split it up to think about ourselves as individuals, then to think of ourselves as like a team, and next we'll be talking about ourselves as, our professional identities, is that I said that we were going to talk about your responsibility. I can't tell you what your responsibility is. Like your personal responsibility and how you feel about that, I think is driven by your values. It is shaped in, the companies that you work for. It's shaped by the problems that you're interested in. It's shaped by the things that you care about. I think right now, kind of being in the field that we are, like we're not bound by like a Hippocratic oath. We don't have, I think, like a strong culture yet in, within our professional communities. Or what does it mean to, work with data, and what should our responsibility be? I'm hoping that by having conversations like this, we can start to build to that place. I think we're kind of at an interesting point in like the maturation process in terms of how we're working with data, that maybe we'll get there. And maybe I feel like in terms of like kind of where we're at with this topic that I'm wanting to build, this conversation we're having, we're somewhere in this like problem finding, problem framing space. And I'm hoping to kind of create more of an audience, create a bigger community of those who are interested in exploring that. So I read this really neat book. I'm about to call it a pop science book. I'm not sure it's quite a pop science book. It's about asking beautiful questions. So believing in the power of questions. There's a website, More Beautiful Questions, and it's all about like, how do you open up a conversation by asking different things. So sometimes, and sometimes these beautiful questions are also maybe a little bit annoying too. When everybody's, on a deadline, and everybody's, no, we really need the solution now. And you come in and you're like, but what problem are we actually trying to solve here? Timing is an art sometimes. But I feel like I found it useful in my career where like, sometimes when I'm having a rough conversation about how we're going to be either designing a product, introducing a new feature, whether or not we're doing user experience research, thinking about like, well, really, what is the problem? Like, and tell me who are the people who are experiencing the problem? And how do we know? I've noticed sometimes by listening to the conversations with teams, even when we claim we're being data-driven, sometimes we are selective about which data which of our kind of assessments and opinions are actually data-driven. So I remember once we were thinking about introducing a feature where somebody, like the PM was just adamant, like, we must have this feature. I'm like, why? Like, who's asking for it? How do you know? Like, I haven't seen any of that. So really asking, like, well, who's experiencing the problem? How do we know? I think, well, at least so from the work I've done with larger tech companies, there's sometimes not like a closed feedback loop where you could actually even like hear negative feedback. One like somebody would like feel uncomfortable with Google knowing like all of it. It's just like, really? That is it. That's not a thing. Okay, well, maybe we can do like more user research, or maybe we can, meet people or go seek evidence of like people for whom privacy is a serious matter.
That Google story, that was, and you've been there, so you could say more definitively, but it's not because they don't respect privacy, that's because of the image they had of themselves as a company,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, certainly like
We do the right
We're
thing,
gonna-
we're forced
we
to
have
good,
good
we're
intentions,
intelligent, we have good systems,
You don't do evil.
we don't do evil, we
Yep.
get good engineers, we
Yes.
get good protocols.
our values are
security,
exactly the
all-
right values and
Yeah.
decision making.
People should trust us because.
But one question one often doesn't ask is like, how could the product that I'm building be abused potentially by the customer or in the wrong hands? I mean, I've seen this
Yeah.
several times where one builds a really cool tool, but then the customer, I can use it for this instead, like track my employees or whatever, and building maybe safeguards against those kind of things and thinking about those things is actually pretty important.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Actually, I should have another question here, not just how do we know we've satisfactorily solved it, but also how do we know it wouldn't be abused? Like, how do we know
Like, can
if
one
something
use
were to go wrong, would we know? And then how would we recover from it? So one of the things that actually, we have like 1 more minute. Find me in the hallway and ask me for a story about design and user research where click-through rates was not the goal. We actually decided we were going to design a privacy notice based and then understand the affect that people had when they saw it. And this was like revolutionary to me. I was like, okay, senior PM, reframe the project. Everything changed because we decided we were going to like elevate a different value for once. And I loved it. It was great. Instead of writing this down, what I'm curious about is, so I said at the macro level, we're going to talk about how you fit in with your professional community. Are these conversations happening about, decision making with data? Are you, and what I want to do is I want to build some space between, I think sometimes it's like, show up to work, here are the problems, it can feel like we have to solve them within the confines of your job, like within your company, within your role at work, within your team. Where really, it's like there's space here, there's us people, there's us showing up to work and doing our job. We're in our different roles at work and we can all come together differently. And also we're representing a community and professional values. So have you ever had had something come up where you want to connect with somebody who's perhaps not so close to the issue at hand? And what do you do when you want to seek that? Has that ever come up for anybody? Maybe I'll let you just sit with it. And if you think of something, either here's a thing that I've tried, or I was kind of in the situation and I didn't really know who to reach out to and ask. I'm gonna leave that with a hand, okay? Sometimes the way that the conflict in values will come up, the way that it feels is like you feel it in your gut. And I remember being like really dissatisfied with that, coming out of like a PhD-CS and thinking like, oh come on, like spidey sense, like really like, how do I describe, how do you like work through that like questioning feeling when you're in a work, in a design meeting. 10 years out of that, I actually do think that there is something to that. Like, you can pay attention to how you're feeling, and maybe you don't like yet have a label for why that is, where it's coming from, or what you need to do next. But to me, it's been a good kind of fallback to sense that, feel it, and then start asking questions. Get curious about it, see and check in if other people are feeling it too. To be honest, I worry a little bit about all of us having been working remotely for so long, because when these tougher conversations come up, I think they're hard to have remotely. I think it's easier to kind of like feel and sense and look around in person and kind of like see who else is having kind of doubts or efforts are going to happen, on the way out of a meeting connect. So what I'm hoping is like somewhere in this conversation, you're all developing new vocabulary, thinking about new muscles you might be pushing and kind of might be exercising related to these conversations. And I guess listening to your spidey sense, my 5-year-old knew that I said that. So going out on the talk, I'll wrap up now, last slide. I love it if you leave with 2 questions for yourself of thinking about what can you do to connect your values to your work. I think this is a way that we start to build a stronger relationship with data and the data we work with, the people we serve through data. My hope is that by thinking differently about our problems and how we frame them, we can, choose a different approach for how we get through this, data crisis that we're having. And also, perhaps less of the focus of this talk, but thinking about how do you connect with the people that are affected by the products you're making, the services that you're making, and open yourself up to hearing about the instances where perhaps things aren't going as rosy as you might hope. My contact information is at the bottom. I'd love to hear from you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your time.